Thanks for coming to hang out with us today. Ruck Up Buttercup is a podcast hosted by Deployed Love. We chat about real things that military families deal with and help you to love the call to action. So you know the drill. Ruck Up Buttercup. Ruck Up Buttercup podcast can be found on all your favorite streaming locations. As well, we are now available on Reach Across America Radio on Fridays at 11 p.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find Reach Across America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. Just search the word Reach. Can't wait to see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Ruck Up Buttercup. If you haven't noticed on social media, which you probably have by now, we are now on TikTok and YouTube, and you're seeing our faces. You're used to just hearing us on your phone while you're doing chores, whatever it is, but now you can start to see us all over the place, which is really exciting. Me and Ashley are super excited about it.
Yeah, this is going to be a great program for us to use. I'm excited.
We're excited to kind of hopefully build more relationships with you. Sometimes it's kind of hard to have a relationship with someone that you only hear through your earbuds, but to be able to connect also on these other platforms with you guys is really fun. And we hope that you guys will want to come join the show, come chat with us, come to book club with us. There's lots of fun things that we do. So we are hoping to really see our community grow over the rest of the year and into years to come. But so right now we're kind of talking about honoring the season that you're currently in. So with the military, there's so much time where we spend looking to the future and worrying about the future and stressing. Honestly, I think it's mostly the stress about what things are going to look like in the future.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I think that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest stressors for military spouses is what's next. When am I going to have to prepare to move? When am I going to have to prepare to leave my job or find a new job, or just all the things that come with it? And so I think this is a really important thing to remind everybody about, because it's such a good topic for us to talk about, as well as just remind everyone that the military life is hard. Number one, we all know that. Everyone who's in the military knows it's a hard life. It comes with the constant changes, which sometimes are great and sometimes they're rewarding, and other times you're just like, what did I sign up for? And then on top of that, it's just you're also going through different seasons of your life yourself. You're growing as a person, you're growing as a family, you're growing in a relationship with your significant other. No matter where it is, you're always in, I feel like we're in more than one season, at a time.
I think so. And I feel like we're just always in a transitional season. And a lot of other families around the country get to have this moment where they're quiet, they're settled down and they don't expect any change. I mean, things change. There's big changes that just suddenly will happen in your life anyways, but they get to just have the same neighbors, have the same school, the same teachers. They get so used to just this very settled life, and we're never there.
More control. Yeah, they have much more control over it. A lot of those big changes, they can control it. A new job opportunity opens up, and it's not a forced job opportunity where you're moving. It's definitely something that is more controlled outside of the military circle. And it can be so daunting. I was just thinking about this when we decided that this was our topic for today. I was like, this is really great, because even when we first moved here, I was not very happy. I was very happy to get out of the typical run-of-the-mill military lifestyle, if that makes sense. We're not at an actual duty station. We're on a special duty assignment. But now that I'm here, we're not near military installation. I'm not surrounded by like-minded people. And it was so tough. I was okay for the first month, and then as the kids got into their routine and my husband went actually back to work after taking so many weeks off, I was just like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with myself? And I started to kind of plummet, because I was like, I can focus on work and stuff like that. And as much as I love my job, my work job and Deployed Love, I was just like, this is rough.
It's hard.
And then it's so hard. It is so hard. And I kind of set myself down. This was a couple weeks ago when Jeremy was gone in January, because it was really tough, because he was my really my only form of human contacts other than like the few people that I've met like through the kids' school and things like that. And I was like, you know what? Actually, no. Like you have to like take control of this season. Like you have to take control and figure things out. So I helped start a little book club here so we can just meet some more people who are like-minded. But like I also just kind of remind myself this is not permanent for me. Like this is a very short assignment. Like I'm already almost halfway through this assignment. Like I only have like a year and a couple months left to it. And so I'm like, I can do this. I can use this time to really dig deep and focus on some projects I've wanted to get done for work because I don't have the excuse of like, well, I have to go do this event. Like my time has blown open since moving here. So, which is great. As much as I love doing all of the in-person events and stuff like that, I've opened myself up to being able to actually focus on like admin work or projects that like are wanting to do projects but like not necessary, but now that I have the free time I can focus on them. And so I'm just kind of like, it's not going to end. Like, you know, winter doesn't last forever. Neither does spring, neither does fall, neither does summer. No season lasts for forever. And so this is a short season for us. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And we were already talking about that new season of life. Like, where is that going to take us? Is it going to take us overseas? Is it going to take us back to Alaska? Is it going to take us back to Fort Liberty? I know we're going somewhere.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy to like wallow in that and just be like, oh, I don't even care. Like, I'd rather just stay home. I don't want to bother with like any of these things, especially when it is temporary. Like, you're talking like, why get my kids involved? Why get them excited to make friends? Why make friends myself?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that was my thing. Like I can make friends and stuff, but like, I'm literally going to have to say goodbye to them in a way much shorter time frame than I would typically like at a 3-year, 4-year duty station. And so like the friend that I have made here, she says like, I don't like the fact that you're going to be leaving in like a year. And there is a possibility that we'll leave a lot sooner than that just because of a couple, you know, Army life. Like there's a couple things that are going into it. Jeremy made promotion. And so that all changes how long we stay here because they don't need him here at that rink. So, which I'm fine leaving early, but I'm fine staying the whole 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, so you can't really ever put any like roots into the expectation of what it's going to look like. Because even us here too, we're kind of like, oh, we're going to move there. We should be able to stay for as long as we want. But now they're like, oh no, well, the shop that your husband works in is closing down at the end of the year. What that looks like, nobody even knows. They're like, well, they still may buy a contract, so it may just move to another shop. We may move to a different city. We may move to a different country. It's like, what does that look like? And so I also am feeling like we have barely transitioned into living here. We've only been here a little over a year. I feel like we barely have any connections with people like I was hoping we would. And then we're looking now, it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to worry about the future already because, like, what does that look like? Are we going to be moving again? Is it worth even continuing to, like, put energy into the things we're putting energy into? Or should we be like, no, we need to start learning a different language because we're moving to a different country. We need to start focusing on the future. And I am the one person who, like, will stress about the future instead of, like, living here. And I have to, like, stop myself and be like, no, I need to honor where I am. And it's okay. We have friends. We want to do these things. We need to travel to these few places still. Like, let's focus on what we're doing now and what we can do. I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to military. What can I do and what can't I even control? Like, what I just let it go.
Yeah, and I think like personalities really play a big role in that because like I'm a planner. I feel so much better when I can like plan things out. Like our first PCS as a like married couple was to J Bear, and we had a good amount of time that we knew before we were going to J Bear. And so I was able to like, I mean, y'all are gonna laugh. I made a binder. I had like information about the base. I had information about like traveling, like what's the best way to travel. We decided that we were driving, so that took a lot of research because we were driving still in the winter months.
Oof.
And so I had to like map out like places to stay. We had the dogs, so a lot of the places were still close. So I planned everything out and it made that PCS so smooth. Our next PCS to Texas was, hey, you have orders for recruiting. We got them in into July, and they're like, your report date's like mid-October, and we're just like, what? Like, we had like barely, and I had just got a promotion at work and things like that, and so I, like, especially when you don't get to control your scenario, you don't get to control things like that, and having that feeling of, I don't have a career, or I can't have a career, and then trying to get other people to like understand that, or just the fact that you have to explain it to people why you may not work, why, like, I feel like I have to be like, I'm always home, but I'm like, I do work. Like, I feel like I have to justify people, like, I'm not just like a military spouse that stays at home, because the typical military spouse like stays at home, and like, but we do so much more. Like, I don't think a lot of people understand everything that goes into being a military spouse. Like, it's a full-time job. And then if you're a mom,
there's so many titles. Like, I always,
yeah,
when people ask like what I do, it's like, oh yeah, I don't really do anything, right? Like, I don't have a physical job, so I am a stay-at-home mom, but I also homeschool, so there's that teacher platform. I do the podcast, which is a big chunk of time each month.
mm-hmm.
I have chores. I have a 4-story house. I mean, that alone could keep a single person busy all day, every day. So it's like, there's so much more. And then there is, like you were saying, when we do get orders for places, we sit, and that is a whole like job that you put yourself into, with like figuring out your moving orders, you're figuring out what is shipping, what you want to declutter, you're figuring out,
Looking for
yeah,
housing.
there's
Yeah,
just so much that
there
it is so
is.
continuous. And I think that a lot of people outside of the military don't understand that, because they're like, oh well,
Yep.
if we move, then we know we're moving to this city, we know how long we have. It's like, yeah, but our
But
orders
I
could
think,
come and it could be like, you have 3 weeks.
yeah. Well, and I also feel like even among military spouses, because there's just so many different MOSs. Like, you have some military spouses who move every year,
Mm-hmm.
who move every 2 years. Then you have some military spouses who have been at the same duty station for 15 years. Like, that I think is so important to kind of like notate, is like, no military spouse journey is the same. We have a lot of similarities. We have a lot of things that we've gone through, like other spouses have gone through, like a deployment, long training cycles, promotions, schools, all of that. We've all kind of dealt with that in our own ways, but every deployment's different. Every PCS is different. I can attest to this. I have PCS. I don't even know how many times I've PCS in my lifetime. I grew up military, if you've been a listener. And I know with my husband, we've PCS'd 4 times, but we also had like 2 moves in there that weren't PCS moves in there, because we're military. We choose to rent, just because like we don't want to tie our money up into a house that we may or may not get to sell when we PCS. Yes, there's the opportunities to rent it out, but we just didn't want to deal with that. And so, being in a military town, like, they just didn't renew our rent. They decided to sell, so we had to move a bunch of times. And so those were things that you don't expect to happen. And so I just, like I said, you have to just kind of live in the moment, and you have to remember that.
It's
Like,
really a thing that you have to think of continuously, is like living in that moment of, I know this season is hard, but it's not going to last forever. I mean,
yeah,
deployments don't last forever. PCSs suck until they're done, and then you're settled somewhere.
even their career,
Mm-hmm.
like, isn't gonna last forever. Like, and that's what I keep telling myself. Like, I know, like, my husband has 15 and a half years now in, and I know that, like, right now our goal is 20. He may want to stay, I mean, at that point he may stay in a little bit longer, just because of like where he'll be at in his career, like, kind of thing. Like, he'd have to make that decision of not taking a job or not,
Well, it'll
whatever.
also kind of depend
But
on your kids. I feel like you guys will kind of be at a decision of like, do we stay in at least through they're done with school kind of
see,
situation.
and I don't think so, because my kids are still fairly young. So, like, by the time like, he hits 20, Devlin will just be entering, I guess he'll be like in his last year of middle school, right? Am I counting?
Yeah.
Second, fourth, fifth? Yeah. So he'll be in middle school still. So it will be like, okay, are we going to stay in another 4 years? But at the same time, I feel like we're going to enter that stage where we would move a lot during his high school years just to base off of where he would be at in his career and if he takes that next step and we stay in. So it's just one of those, like, right now, the goal is to hit 20, get that retirement. That's our goal. If an opportunity arises, hopefully we'll talk about it as a family. But, I
Doesn't
also,
happen.
and it doesn't. And, I mean, that's a big decision to go on after 20, especially because we have a plan for when he retires. And so if we didn't have that, I'd be like, shoot, just you do you, boo. I will support you, all that kind of stuff. But we are fortunate enough to have a job already lined up and that's still 5 years away. So it's one of those things where you like, I remember, like, this is only short lived. And even if it wasn't short lived, it's still not going to be something that I know that's going to just be forever.
No, it's
Now,
going to
if you're
end because, I mean, they're military. You think about the things that their bodies go through. Eventually, they're going to just be over it.
Yeah, they're going to be over it. Jeremy, I don't think I told you this, but he has hearing aids now.
Oh, yeah.
36 years old, this poor man. I was cracking up last night because Claire was calling him Papa. I guess one of her friends calls their dad Papa. And I looked at her and I was like, are you calling Dad Papa? Because he's got pretty much a full head of hair, gray, and hearing aids. She goes, yeah, that's right. And I was like, well, it looks like I looked at him, I was like, it looks like you have a new name. A new season for you. You're going to be referred to
He's going
as
to come
Papa.
home with his...
Which was so funny because, like, his soldiers, because he's older. He's been in 15 years. All that, they actually call him Papa Brown. So I was just hysterically laughing. Like, when he came home and had, like, yeah, I have to get hearing aids. And I was just like, oh, your name is really going to solidify with your soldiers because now you have hearing aids. And he's way more gray, like, after the last, like, 2 years of work. And so, but, like, it's just a new season. Like, we're also getting older. Like, I'm having to come to, like, terms with, like, I will be 40 soon. And I don't know how I feel about that. I had no issues turning 30 or being in my 30s. But, in a couple years, I will be 40. And I'm kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that.
It's funny, the, like, perspective of 40s because, like, 30, yeah, I didn't have an issue with 30, but then it's like, I remember my mom turning 40 when I was in high school, and I'm like, we made like, it was so bad, like, the over-the-hill jokes and, like, how old you are, and
Yeah.
now I'm like, but that's not that far away, and I don't feel old, and I feel so bad because I'm like, we were so mean,
Yeah.
like...
Yeah. I don't ever remember, like, saying, like, oh my gosh, you're old to my mom or anything like that. But I mean, Claire called me a grandma last night and I was like, dang, like, wait, she's so snarky though, y'all. She is a little spitfire.
Like, I have a grand nephew. I am a grand to somebody. Like, that's crazy.
I'm not there yet, thank goodness. I mean, thankfully, yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like, but I mean, like, even my kids are getting older. They don't need me as much. So then I'm kind of like, what do I do with my time? Like, I mean, they still need me quite a bit. They're still young enough that they still need me to, like, feed and nurture and that kind of stuff. But they're also getting to the point where they're very independent. Yours are way older than mine. And
yeah, so about that, so the story is today that I had my godson here. If you guys, some of you may know, but I have a godson who is my husband's best friend's kid. They moved here the same time as us as well, so we kind of on and off watch him. But he's a toddler, and the last time I watched him, he was not mobile. So it was like the realization that, yeah, 7 years has passed since I've had a toddler, and I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, the things that you have to rechange in your house. And I just want to give, like, a huge shout out to moms in that season of toddlerhood. Yes. Or in her case, the reason we were watching him is because she was having a baby today. So, like, she's going to be 2 under 2. I mean, they're going to be so much work.
You know what? Power to all of our mamas who've gone through having 2 under 2. I have no idea how that would be because Devin was like 3.5 when I had Claire.
Yeah.
So there was still, like, he was dependent enough to, like, be okay on his own if I had to walk out of the room. My sister-in-law just told us that she's having her second. And she's gonna have 2 under 2, and it's fantastic news because she had to go through that, IVF cycle, things like that. So this was a very big surprise, very big shock that she naturally conceived, and it's one of those things where no matter, I feel like no matter how hard it gets, there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel, and you just have to persevere, type of
Yeah,
thing.
two
Like,
under
so
two is
anybody who's
hard.
gone through it type of effort.
Mine were, had two under two for 2 months because Kira was almost 3. But I also think that the benefits of having two under two comes when they're like 5 or 6 because it's
Yeah,
beautiful. My kids play really well together because although there is an age gap, and as the last couple years as she's become preteen, I like that gap has become more obvious, however, but like there's just been this huge time frame where they're best friends. They play together
yeah,
really well. And so they're young enough gap that they can just get along. And their friends are similar ages. So they find a lot of friends that are in those years in between too. So no matter where they go, there's going to be someone that they can connect with. And that's been
yeah.
really, really helpful.
I think
So
that
like,
would be really
yeah,
helpful for
getting through
sure, because I feel like
the toddlerhood in those first years is rough. Like I remember coming home with a newborn to someone who still expects to be held, expects to sleep with you at night, expects all the things that a baby does
who
pretty
still
much.
needs you to change diapers
Yeah.
and feed them and watch them while they eat so they don't choke to death. Like,
Yeah.
it can be a lot of strain, and it makes sense, like, why so many military spouses don't work outside the home, especially when they have young kids, because I mean, unfortunately, like, as much as we love our service members, they're not very helpful when it comes to like a sick
The
child or
crews
anything like
just
that, because
don't make it
they
helpful.
just
There's just no way. I mean,
yeah.
even if your kids are healthy, like the concept is they work, they go to PT at 6 o'clock in the morning and they don't get home until dinner time. There's just not that time for them to be helpful.
Yeah.
And I think,
Well, and like they don't have the opportunities to take off work. Like, if you work in a regular civilian job, you can say, hey, my kid's sick, I can't come
yeah,
in today. And which really sucks because it puts all of that pressure on the other person to be the caregiver 95% of the time. And now, granted, like if you're listening, like, oh, my husband gets off, like every MOS is different, every command is different. And so it really comes down to, do you have a very supportive command team? Do you have an MOS where you can kind of have that wiggle room to be, hey, I got to go home to help with kids drop off after
yeah,
PT?
it's
Live
gotten
close enough
better.
to do
Like
those things.
I'm
Yeah.
coming from the perspective of like what it was 10,
Yeah.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
But I know that there's paternity leave, which is crazy. Like it was like 2 or
Well,
3
now the
weeks.
Jeremy's like, why couldn't you have waited and waited to have kids? I'm like, because we didn't know that the paternity leave was coming. Like,
I know, and
did you really want to have kids when you were 30?
I am so happy for moms right now. Like to know
Yeah.
that those first months are so hard, and to be able to have the dad there to help longer than a week or two is
Yeah, especially when you're like in a new duty station and you haven't made your tribe yet. Like that was like I had Devlin in Alaska, but we moved when he was 6 months old. So we moved and I was just like, I don't know anybody. There's no one here to like give me an hour to go shower
yeah.
or anything like that. And then Claire, we had in Texas. And then we moved when she was 9 months old. But there's so many spouses who move mid pregnancy.
Yeah, I did. I mean that season came
Yeah,
really
that's right. You
fast,
and
and
her.
it was like where this movement, I was like, nah, I don't need to make friends immediately. Like I'm okay in who I am in my mid 30s. I'm not like strained for that.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, I am 23 years old. I don't even know
Yep.
how to have a baby, let alone one in another country. I was so desperate to find anybody who would put some time into like being my community.
Yeah. But it can be so isolating when you're stuck at home
Mhm.
with a little tiny baby that it can be really daunting. And so having just a person to come over and sit with you is really important if you can find that person.
It is getting yourself out there. I know with the babies, it's
Yeah.
hard to get out, but I think probably every single base on their ACS has the toddler time, the baby,
Yeah.
like baby belly
I
time
think it's an
situation.
amazing program, like the Mommy and Me program.
Yeah.
I honestly wish that was out when I was a first time mommy. I don't remember it being an offer.
They
Like, I
they
don't
definitely
remember.
had it in Beeswater because I remember, and so like it was nice. I'd bring my baby and we'd sit in a circle. You're talking, I mean, the babies range from like 3 months. I think they went up to 9 months because then they moved into the toddler time. But you just sit there. The babies aren't playing, but there's a nice lady who would come and like interact with your kids, and then you
Yeah.
could talk to the other moms. I learned how to
Well, and
rap,
there's
like
also,
all those things.
yeah, and I know like at Liberty, like their program like extends further than that. Like they have someone who will come to your home
Mm-hmm.
and help you, like teach you how to do things if you don't have that person. Because not everyone has like the support system, even a family support system where they can be like, well, this isn't working. What should I do next? Type of thing. And social media really plays a big role nowadays. Like now that there's social media, we've talked about this, like it really does help to be able to be like, hey, in one of the groups, like, what would you suggest? This isn't working. But back, I mean, social media was around when I had my kids, so that was really helpful. But we have spouses who didn't have that opportunity. But I think it's really great because a lot of the spouses go way out of their way to try to be as helpful as possible. And like everything you say, like anytime you ask for advice on the internet, take it with a grain of salt, everybody. Like you have to like, oh, that's a great idea. Let me do a little bit more research on it. Like just keep that in mind. Like I think that's such an important tip. Like something that works for one person or one baby isn't going to work for you. And again, it's kind of like a season. Like you have to figure out what is the best thing for you and your family.
Yeah, and with babies, it changes so quickly. Like what was working really well for this season of like 2 months isn't going to work
Yep.
in 6 months.
Yep. What happened with one kid is not going to be, my kids were
Oh yeah,
totally
not at all.
opposites. Total opposites. Potty training, I was like, I got this down for Claire. And she was so easy. I didn't even have to potty train her. She was just like, brother goes potty on the potty. I see you go potty. I'm going to go potty. Where Declan was a nightmare to potty train.
Yeah.
But he's also a boy. I feel
think
boys are a
boys
lot
just
harder to potty train.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, like the season of momhood, the season of being just a spouse, like no dependents underneath you, to transitioning into a mom of older kids, transitioning from being a new spouse to a seasoned spouse. Like all of those are so different. And it's just kind of, that's
Yeah. I
important to
mean,
kind
we
of
can
like
kind of hit on all those.
notice. But
I think hitting on the like being a lone spouse part too, like so that we're kind of like relating to all of you, was we were those spouses for a time. Like
yep,
I was also that. So I've been there, and I know being the alone spouse, especially when a deployment or a school or a
yeah,
training comes up, is the loneliest time. Like you can have a
yep,
tribe, but they're not sleeping in your bed with you. Like
yep.
they're not eating meals
I
with
mean,
you. Maybe, yeah, maybe a couple, but
I don't know. I 100% had sleepovers when I first became a spouse with some of my friends. I mean, not, I don't think any of us actually slept in the same bed,
but
but
like
like,
it's not
I had a
every
guest
night.
room and stuff,
Like there is
but not
going
every
to
night.
be
Like you don't have
times
someone.
where you're alone. You're just so alone. And you can have a job, you can have friends, you can have PTA,
Yep.
you can have whatever
And
it
it's
is,
the loneliest time.
but there's going to be dinners where you sit at a table and you read a book because there's nothing else to do. That
And,
season's so hard.
and I think it's really important. Don't do what I did. So we didn't have kids for a while. Like I think we didn't start having kids until 5 years. We were just after being married. Like we took our time having kids. Yeah, it was about 5 years before we like got pregnant with our first. And so it's one of those things where like when he first deployed, as like when we first got married, so his second deployment, I hated being by myself at the house. And I would go out to dinner and I would do all these things, and I spent way too much money. Way too much money. Like it became an issue. Now I was also going through a really heavy depression era. I was having a lot of hard time. I had like 3 of my grandparents passed away that year. I had some family issues that I was having that I was kind of struggling my emotions with. And then he was deployed in a very heavy time of soldiers not coming home. And so that depression just took me by the throat, and I was just like, I can't be home by myself. It's just too quiet. It's too lonely. So I was just like going out to dinner with friends. I was like, instead of going home after work, I was going to like the store and going shopping, and I just spent way too much money. And so I think it's really important to have those conversations with your significant other, saying like, hey, like, I'm really struggling. Like, how can we, like, make it, don't, like I said, don't do what I did, because it was a huge issue. And I didn't really realize I was doing it until my husband's just like, have you looked at the bank account? Have you looked at how much money you've spent? Type of thing. And so it's one of those things where that was a really dark time for me. But then, like, as we transitioned and went into other deployments, I made the conscience, like, nope, we are only, if we go out to dinner, it's like once every 2 weeks, once a pay period. Like, I made a very strict guideline. It was a lot easier though when I had kids. Like, it was a lot easier to stick to that.
Yeah. But I think that falls
And
into the, like, honoring your season. You have to realize
yeah,
when you're having a hard time, you have to like
yeah,
slow down and embrace being alone, because I think it sucks. Like, it's quiet and
it
it's really
does.
sad, but you are going to grow so much if you're able to like take that time alone and figure out how to grow as a person, instead of like just, finding some substitute for it, finding some other way to cope with it that's not a healthy way. Like yours was spending, but there's
Yeah,
people who drink, there's people who like, you're going to
yeah,
come out of the other end and be like, man, yeah, the depression hit hard, but I did not handle it well. Versus there's so many resources. Like we've talked about, so many
yeah.
resources to help
Well,
you.
and I think it's really important to connect with people who are going through the same thing. That was one of my things, is like, my husband, when he first joined the services, wanted absolutely nothing to do with anybody he worked with, which meant he didn't want me to have anything to do with anybody's spouses he works with. And so after that deployment, we had the long discussion of like, this is why it's important to me. Like, you don't have to be friends with them, but like, I need to have that connection. Like, I don't need to hear any griping about being a part of the FRG or connecting to spouses type of thing, because it was so, because all of my friends weren't military spouses that I had there. We were stationed at Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty. That's where we met. Both our parents were stationed there, so we had friends from like school, from graduating, and then I had friends that I worked with when I worked at Outback. And so it was one of the things where like they 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 understood I was going through a hard time, but they didn't understand
Yeah, the
like
behind of
the
it.
worry, all that kind of stuff. And so I am such a firm believer, even if it's just one person where if you ever have any type of like concerns, or you need to vent or something like that, have that one person that is going through it with you. It doesn't even have to be in the same like company. Like, there's usually more than one company that goes. Like, make friends with someone within the battalion, one person that you have a connection with. Connect with those resources.
Yeah, and we've
Connect
talked about
with,
social media again, and bring that back, is find a group that meets together, whether that's Deployed Love, whether that's a book club, whether that's whatever's in your area. Because if you find
there's
that and
so
you're
many
able to
different
just
things.
put yourself out there one time, I can promise you, like, it is so scary the first time you walk into the coffee shop, the bell rings, and there's like people sitting at a table staring at you.
Yeah, and they're like, "Hey."
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that one time you will find somebody who has something in common with you. If it's just
And
the military,
everyone who
that's
are,
fine.
and it's so funny because, like, I know a lot of us deal with anxiety. A lot of us have social anxiety, and that comes with, like, just the constant, like, moving and things like that. Like, just, will they like me? All those kind of things. But every person who are at those type of events are there for the same reason you're going. They want to connect with somebody. They want to have somebody in their corner when they need to talk to you, even if it's not even a like event. Like, they just want to have a person where they can see a friendly face once a week, once a month, even. Like, that is just kind of like why it's so important to have a military connection. I see so many spouses who are just like, I don't want to have forced friends or things like that. I don't want to be friends with someone who's in my husband's job. And I can understand that, because like, a lot of people will say like, well, why would I make friends with someone if my husband worked at a bank? I'm like, I get that, but it's such a different mentality. It's such a different world. And there's things that civilian families, spouses just will not
And that's
understand
just going to
that
make
we
you
go
frustrated, because it comes on
through.
even just the simplest things of like, why is your husband on a camping trip for 3 days? Like, it doesn't have to be a deployment, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a PCS, but there's just little things where it's like, well, my husband would never go away for 3 days without me. It's like, you don't get the choice. Like, that's just life
Yeah.
in the military.
Like, explaining to everyone here, because like I said, we are not at a military installation. We are in a beautiful little small town in Virginia mountains. My husband's working at the ROTC program and at the local university. And me having to explain to him why he was gone all of January, like they're like, where's your husband? And I'm like, oh. And they're like, he's gone that long. I'm like, this is nothing. This is nothing. Like him being gone. Like I was like, he's living it up. He's having a grand old time. You know, like he had a great time, by the way. Like I was like, he was visiting all
Like
of the distilleries
reconnecting.
in
Yeah.
Kentucky. Was, you know, obviously he was working really hard on like master program stuff, but you know, but they also need to have that freedom too. Like they are constantly working too. So like, you know, that's my thing with Jeremy. I'm like, go hunt, do your thing. If you, what you need to do to feel better about yourself. Like they have to have their seasons too. And they have way more like less time to be in their season than we do as spouses, I feel
Yeah, I
like.
think that's something that we kind of forget about because I know, and I even now I'm guilty of it, but even more so when I had babies, like as soon as you get home, hand them off, like they also never get a break because I know that it feels
Yeah,
like as a mom, like we never get a break because we're cooking, we're cleaning, we're changing diapers, we're doing school. There's something always going on, and there is. Like I absolutely, but there's something
yeah,
going on for your military spouse all the time also. So when they
yeah.
come home and they want a moment to whether it's just take a quick nap. My husband takes a quick nap every day. Does it
Yeah,
frustrate me some
mine does
days where I'm
too.
like, dude, I need you to not? Yeah, but is it okay to just let go of an hour and then be like, okay, now we can start where we're both feeling a little more refreshed? Sometimes I join
Yeah,
him. Like it's just
yeah.
do what you have to, but you have to also respect that they are humans and they are going to try their hardest to be there at your level and help when they get home, but they also have been working all day long and they can't just immediately transition into like here's a
Especially
baby.
like as they grow in their career. Like, you know, I like when Jeremy was the first sergeant last year before we came here, I knew that his schedule was just pure chaos. Like the amount of work, I mean, like I said, he went from just a teeny tiny bit of gray to like a full head of hair of gray in a year span. And I try to remember that. And that's why, like, I'm like, you know, that's what I told him. I was like, you know, this is why, like, during hunting season, I don't say anything. Like, if you want to go ride your bike, I don't say anything, but I do also expect you to be present and help me when you're not doing those things.
Yeah. It's
Now
definitely a
I also have to ask
conversation
him,
you have to have with your
yeah,
spouse. You have to have it and you have to both slow down.
and
That's
multiple
the whole
times.
like slow
Yeah,
down and think about what the season is because if we're in a really stressful season, so like it's the end of like your kids are graduating, it's the end of the year and things are getting really hectic, you need to have that conversation with your spouse like I get that you need space and time. I need space and time, but we don't
yep,
have that in this season. This season is going to be hush, it's going to be rushed. Every weekend it's going to be visiting families, it's going to be getting things
yep,
ordered. Like there's seasons that are just not going to have that time where you can have your time. There just is. As a parent, you're going to lose hours and hours of time where you
yeah.
just don't
And
have free time.
I think that's like really important to kind of like notate too, because like I had to remind myself that too. I was like, again, like I feel like we're just constantly doing things, and then I'm like, but this part of this life is gonna only be this time frame. Like, you know, I struggled with Claire sleeping in her own bed for like the longest time. And I have to keep reminding Jeremy, I was like, she's only gonna do this for so long. Like she's only gonna want to curl up in bed with us for so long. Like, yes, she needs to sleep in her own bed, but at the same time, like I'm gonna soak this in.
Yeah.
Like I want to soak in that she still wants to cuddle us and she still wants to be with us because there's gonna come a day where she's gonna be like, ew, like no. And I'm gonna be heartbroken
Yeah. I think
so
that's like the
much.
whole
Like,
story of today is just like that slow down, like, and really see where you are because preteen, all I can think is like, God, I cannot wait till we get past this. Like, this is
yeah,
rough. We fight and argue all the time. She rolls her eyes. She throws, like, it's like having a toddler in my house again. And it's not fun. And all I keep thinking is like, I want to push past this. But I also need to like slow down and realize that, like, hey, this is a really good time for us to connect, like, for us to talk about the
yeah.
things that she's going through and hopefully continue that relationship as she goes into high school and has harder situations that she's going to encounter and to be like, yeah, I had that time and I pushed through it because we were able to connect would be so much better than be like, yeah, that time sucked. I'm so glad it's over. Like,
Yeah,
I'd rather be able to
yeah,
look
for
back and be like, we
sure.
slowed down in that season. We enjoyed each other in
Yeah,
that season and we figured out ways to there's going to be frustrating days. There's going to be days where I'm like, just go to your room and go away from me. But there's going to be days where I'm like, okay, I'll stop. We don't have to do school today. What can we work through so that tomorrow's school is easier?
Yeah. I definitely think it's just like you said, important to slow down and appreciate where you're at. Even if it's during like one of the worst seasons of your life. Like you cannot like just cope with anything that you're going through. Try to find that silver lining, or try to find out like, oh wait, you know what, like instead of just powering through this, how can I make this better? How can I either exit this season a lot quicker in a way that is going to be healthy for myself and others around me, or what can I do to kind of just make it last? Because I mean, sometimes we have no control over the season we're in, like we said, like you can't control a deployment, you can't control moving, you can't, I mean, not really, but you know, you can control aspects of those things. You can control how you communicate with your significant other. You can control what you do during those time frames that can help make it better. So you just have to look for that little bit of yes, not yes, but like a little bit more of the that silver lining, the little bit of positivity, and kind of just move to that rather than towards the negative, the dark side of things. But it's also okay. Like, I think we say this all the time. It's also okay to be in your feelings about it. Like, be in your feels, be mad, be sad, be angry, and then make a game plan and
Yeah.
move forward
I
the
mean,
best
I
you
feel like
can.
that I've definitely been in that season where it was just I didn't think I would make it through it because my husband was deployed. That was when we were just the two of us, and one of my grandparents died, and I was just stuck because I was stuck. We were
Yep.
poor. I mean, we were E1,
Yep.
E2
Yes.
maybe, right? And in Hawaii, and I was like, how do I even get to be around my family? How I don't have my husband here for support. Can he come home? Like I needed him so badly, and it was just like I have to find a way to make it okay. Like, and we were able to get me home. Obviously, family members helped pay for me to get home, and then it was then just slow down. Like you want to
Yep.
count down that deployment, but those are precious moments. Those are precious moments when you're with the other grandparent, when you're with your parents, your siblings, and just let the deployment countdown get off track. It doesn't matter because that's
Yeah.
going to continuously be there, but slow
Yep.
down and enjoy the point that you're home or you're with family when you need support. It doesn't have to be a death, but it could be anything that you need support and you
And I was
have
gonna
to
say,
just
like,
slow down, ask for it.
the
And
seasons with your families, like even those can change. Like I did not have a good relationship with my mother-in-law when we first got married, and that was kind of, I think, what made that first deployment was rough, because we still lived at Fort Bragg, and my mother still lived there, his mother still lived there, but I didn't have their, I mean, I had my mom's support, but my mom is just my mother. Like she's just always super busy, but I didn't have his mother's support. It was very rocky, and I went, like I said, I went through the deaths of three grandparents that I was very, very close to, the rough deployment, the depression, the struggle with my other family, my bio dad. I was really struggling with not being a part of the family like I was like should be. Like I kind of felt more like a guest than I did as a daughter. Not his fault, more other people in that part of the family. But at the same time, my husband was very disconnected as well. Like he was very like, dang, like I don't think he meant to like make it this way, but he very much was like, I really wish I kind of got the feel of being like not married really young. Even though it was kind of his idea to get married, it was one of those things where all of his buddies were not married, and he wanted to have that freedom to do whatever he wanted to do and not communicate. And so our blessing was a PCS move. Our PCS to Alaska was what got us out of that whole funk, the whole like not in a good relationship at
yeah,
this
right.
location,
So I
the
think that
relationship with people.
these seasons will change, and if you're having a really hard
Yep.
season, I think that's the great thing about the military life, right? Like it's like this
It
season
gives
is
you a
just going to
chance
go
to
away.
refresh.
Yeah,
Yep.
in 2 or 3 years,
Like you don't
it's
like the
gonna not
location.
even be part
Yep.
of your life.
Yep.
So
And like and I think that's important. Like you have to take like a lot of people, especially when it comes to PCSing, like that season of changing, a lot of people will read the bad about a place and then not go find the good. Like you have to go find the good. You have to go find what works for you and your family. Do not take what you read on the internet and then just solidify that in your brain. Like you have to do your research. You have to take like all the, like whether you're researching school systems or doctors or anything like that, you have to do your own research to see if that is actually that advice was legit and should be worth taking, or be like, oh, that's not that bad, like that may just be an off day type of thing. So you have to find the good. Like even if the only good that is in there is that you got to sleep in one day during the week out of your entire week, like there is always going to be a tiny bit of good in somewhere in that season.
Yeah, and I think the finding that good is in that slowdown of like the good can be simple, like you were saying, sleeping in. It could be you got to pick up the book you wanted to read because things got canceled. We had a couple hours extra, we can sit and read. Like there you can find that, just slow down and look at the time. I think that especially as parents, we get into such a rush of like, I've got only this
Yeah.
much time till dinner, this much time till bedtime, this much like, but you do,
Girl,
you
that's
have
how I
so
felt
much time. There is so much time in the day. You find yourself probably on your phone more than you realize, or
yes.
just zoning out. Like there's so many activities that you do throughout the day that you could change and then have that time.
Yep. And like I said, there may be days where you don't get to have that extra time, but then there's going to be days where like Sunday, I don't really have anything planned all day Sunday, and I'm like, I'm going to catch up on my reading of my physical book that I'm reading, because I typically read those a lot slower, and I'm like, that's what I'm planning. I'm like, I'm just going to curl up and read it and call it a day. Like I will have everything else done hopefully before then. We'll see. But there's also days where like laundry stays in my basket for weeks on end. They're clean, but I also know that like it's okay. Like if I don't get to that, it's okay, because I got to the other important things, or at least that's what I tell myself. So
Yeah. Well, and all together, just like figure out what that season is, look at it, and then just realize next year it's going to be like just a little memory in the memory book of like, oh, I survived that. It's a blip. Everything is a blip. I mean, you come down to
yep,
even the hardest times. It's a little blip. Like I can remember those hard times like I'm talking about with my grandparents passing, but like I'm past it. Like
yeah,
life is fine
yep,
now, and we all survived. We all got out of it, right? Like it's fine, and you just it's such a season, and that's the seasons they're gonna change. You're gonna eventually your kids are gonna move out. You're gonna be alone. Your spouse will eventually pass. Like that, you're gonna come to a point where you're really alone. So like just enjoy the season you're in. Figure out ways to honor it and find ways to like just slow down and think about those memories, because you don't want to be rushing past. I mean, deployments, I feel like when coming back around to deployments a lot, but that's when we have that deployment countdown, right? And you're like
yeah.
wishing your days away. Like, don't. And that's why we have to play love in the
No,
holiday
like
minis. Like, don't wish it
yeah.
away. Find ways to honor
Well,
it.
don't wish away, but also just like keep living. Like there are so many spouses who really do get stuck during deployments and they don't like continue. And I was that way very first. Like I didn't want to plan any trips or anything like that. And as much as like it doesn't hurt him, as much as he wants to go along with that trip, I can't not go do things with the kids because you're not here, because you're not here a lot. Like, he just told me this morning that he wasn't on the summer training calendar and now he's going to be gone for 45 days this summer. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to just sit here and do absolutely nothing. Like I'm going to plan something to do with at least the kids at least one time during the summer months, whether it's when you can go with us or during that time when you're gone, because he still hasn't given me the dates, typical Army. But you got to keep doing it. Like, don't keep putting things off like, oh, we'll go on that trip when he gets home. It never happens. I
Yeah.
mean, we said that about our wedding. Like, we eloped and we're like, oh, we'll get married. We had to cancel our original wedding due to the deaths of my grandparents and things like that. And then we're like, oh, well, we'll plan the wedding the following year. Did that happen? No, because he was deploying again. Did he deploy? Nope. But, at the same time, like, it was just like, we aren't making plans for future, like make plans for future dates, but just know that those might get canceled. But
Yeah,
at
I
the same
think
time,
if you're
living when
really,
they're
really
gone.
concerned about your spouse coming, then try to make plans. But I think you need to learn how to be independent in that sense, because even now,
Yes.
like, it's not just because he's deployed or anything, it's because he can't take enough time to go do the things that I
Mhm.
would like to go do while we're here in Europe. And so I have, I mean, I know I'm blessed. Like, it's graceful that my brother lives in Italy. But we go and we spend 3 weeks every spring in Italy because we can and he can't. Like,
Mhm.
do I feel bad that he can't be there for some of those memories? Yeah. I mean, some of the things we've done are really cool and would be cool to have had him there. But we can't just stop living. Like, I know his
Yeah.
schedule
And then
now is just not
eventually,
set to
yeah.
travel. Like, he gets two
Yeah.
days off a week. There's never 4-day weekends. It's just 2 days. Like, where you can't go
Yeah.
to these places in 2 days without using a bunch of leave time.
And it's
So we're
also
in
a
a season
season of
where he
life.
can't travel.
Eventually, yeah, eventually he'll be able
Yeah.
to. Like, it's a season of life. Eventually, there will be a time when he can.
Mhm.
But I feel like, especially when it comes to traveling and like going places, like the kids experience it differently. Like, your kids are a great age to travel and see things over in Europe. And for them to miss out on that opportunity, especially if you guys leave Europe, like, I mean, that's just kind of mean. Like, you want to make sure that they get to experience all the things. That's one of the perks of being a military kid,
Mhm.
is to be able to experience things that they would never in their lifetime get to experience. I was super fortunate to get to live overseas when I was a kid. And even though my dad was gone the very first year that we lived there, well, actually, a lot of the time that we lived there because of 9/11 and stuff happened, he ended up leaving right after that. We still traveled. We still went to Paris and Italy and all the different countries around there. And so my mom made sure that we still got to experience living in Europe, even though my dad wasn't along for the trip.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. And you have to just do what you can with the time and where you are
Yeah.
and what makes the most sense for your whole family. Sometimes it doesn't include everybody, but sometimes that's what makes sense. It is what makes sense. So like you went to Disney and like
Yep.
it's fine. It's okay.
It was fine. And my husband didn't, I mean, I'm sure like he's sad that he couldn't go because like he didn't get to experience like the kids like wonder and stuff like that. But also at the same time, my husband has horrible PTSD and does not do well in
Yeah.
crowds. And he would have been a total nightmare on that trip and no one would have been happy. I know I wouldn't have been happy, but I know that he also kind of like feels bummed that he didn't get to go, even though he recognizes that he he wouldn't have had a good experience. He would have been overwhelmed, overstimulated, really stressed out. And I don't do well when he's cranky with me. And so, which means he would have been cranky and we probably would have fought the entire time we were there. And it, especially when we were in such a large group, I would love to go when the kids are slightly older again and just the four of us. But at the same time, he's also kind of like really hesitant to do it because he knows how big the crowds are at Disney.
Yeah.
But
Well,
he was okay with not going.
yeah, it's okay. And there's going to be times where you just feel like missed things, but it's okay. And I think that that's the whole living in the season. I think that this episode's been really great. I know that we're both kind of in this like season of what does it look like in a
Yeah.
year from now? I have no idea.
Yeah.
It could be so different from what it is right now that it's obscene. Like because I
Yeah.
thought we were moving to like a more settled situation and
Yep.
it's not. And that's the military.
Yeah.
Like
Because we're
what your expectations are not what it's going to be. So
Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
we're in the season like the same thing. Like, we will, whether we leave early from this assignment, whether we go back, because we can definitely go back to Fort Liberty, but we also like want to utilize, like, take advantage of maybe potentially going to Italy. Jeremy wants to go back to Alaska, which I mean, I loved Alaska, so I wouldn't mind going back to Alaska too, but at the same time, I don't know if he's planning to change, if he's going to stay 82nd or if he's going to change MOS. Like, we're in a really weird spot for sure, which also then puts me in a weird spot of like, well, what am I going to do for my job? Like, if we move to Italy, I will have to make some major changes on how I interact with my everyday job, how I interact with deployed love, and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely going to be one of the things where, like, I wish I can plan for it, but I don't think I can plan for it until we know for sure what will happen once he pins E8 and then moves on to like where the need is, because that's also the huge thing is, like, we could say we want to go to Italy, we want to go to Alaska, we want to go to Liberty, and they're going to be like, we don't need anybody at any of those places that are in your rank and in your MOS.
Yeah. Well, lucky for all of you listeners, you'll get to follow along and find out how it all turns out for us in our seasons.
Absolutely.
We'll still be here, and we'll be here to complain about it or be super excited about where the next move is, because though we talk about it like, oh, this could be super stressful, it's going to be exciting because I know I love moving.
Yes.
And we've talked about it like that.
Yeah.
When you hit that 3-year mark, you're like, we got to go anyways. So it will be exciting either way. It will be stressful at times.
Leaving. Yeah. I definitely enjoy the moving part for sure.
Yeah. So
especially when you get to go somewhere new.
Have you guys along, and you'll continue to hear us, and we're super excited. If you guys see us on TikTok or YouTube or anywhere, please leave a comment, share with some friends, because we're trying to just get those things growing a little bit better so we can reach more amazing military spouses and continue to bring you really awesome resources. If you're looking forward to the future and some more, we do have like really cool things coming out. We're going to be talking to someone about working from home. We actually have someone really awesome from the Fisher House coming on to talk to us about their programs and what they offer to families, as well as other seasons of life, motherhood and parents, and everything that you've seen over the last couple of years is coming at you soon. So we're excited for you guys to join us for all of that and be part of our community. Come join the book club. We would love to have more people to talk to about our books.
Oh my gosh, yes.
and then also check out Deployed Love, because if you aren't aware, they are our sponsoring nonprofit. Ashley and I have been very heavily involved in that over the last few years. So we hope that you guys come also to some of the events live. You'll get to meet some of our great volunteers. We also have virtual coffee chats, lots of stuff that is always available. And otherwise, we hope that you continue to listen, share us with your friends, and really help us reach this community and become a community. That's the biggest thing for my goal for the year, is for us to be a big community together and be able to support each other. Because I could use support, like Ashley was saying, we're both kind of a little bit more isolated than we're used to, communities too. So we would love to have you guys as friends.
Absolutely. And especially for Deployed Love, you know, April is Purple Up Month, and we are going to have some fantastic events across all of our current coordinators at our bases that we have current coordinators at. So keep a lookout for that information on the main page, because there are going to be events to just celebrate our tiniest little soldiers that are in the military unit, family units. And so keep an eye out for that, because there's also some amazing other resources that we'll be sharing from other organizations as well who are having events in April.
Yeah. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. We will talk to you again in about 2 weeks. If you're on social media, you'll see us every day. So that's even more exciting. Otherwise, we'll see you guys later. And like we like to say, Ruck Up Buttercup.
Bye.